I always knew my ranch was different, quiet, isolated, and far beyond the reach of petty neighborhood politics, or so I thought. Everything changed the day in HOA. I didn't even belong to showed up at my gate with armed community officers, claiming they had the authority to detain me on my own land. They expected me to panic. They expected me to surrender. What they didn't know was that I held a power they could never. Imagine a power that could destroy every HOA in America with a single decision. So, how did an attempted arrest on my ranch turn into the downfall of an entire HOA employee? Drop your location and comment. Let's see how far this story reaches around the world. For most of my life, the ranch wasn't just property, it was peace. A wide stretch of open land where the sunrise hit the fields like a golden wave, where every morning began with quiet routines that grounded me, feeding the horses, checking the fences, and listening to nothing but wind cutting through the brush. Out here, miles away from suburban politics and petty committees, I felt untouchable. No rules, no board members, no strangers with clipboards telling me how tall my grass should be or what color my front gate must remain. That's exactly why I chose this place. A ranch meant freedom, or at least that's what I believed. Most days ended with me sitting on the porch, boots dusty, hat thrown aside, watching the sky turn shades of orange and blue. My nearest neighbors were acres away, and the closest HOA was so far out of range that the idea of them intervening in ranch life felt laughable. My land, my choices, my space. The world could do whatever it wanted beyond my fence line, but none of it reached me, or so I thought. The first sign of trouble came quietly, a subtle shift I almost dismissed. It started when I noticed unfamiliar trucks driving slowly past the entrance of my property, not ranchers, not delivery drivers, not locals. Their vehicles were spotless, out of place, and equipped with the kind of tinted windows that made you feel watched. They never stopped, never rolled down a window, but they circled often enough to make me wonder who they hear. Then came the letters. At first, they looked like standard mail, white envelopes, generic print, and no clear sender. Inside were notices about community expectations, structural compliance, and mandatory inspection. Schedules. I assumed they were sent by mistake, after all. My ranch was outside any HOA boundary by miles. I skimmed them, shrugged, and tossed them aside, but the letters kept coming, each one more assertive than the last. Then the tone changed. The wording became sharper, more demanding. They listed possible violations, referencing structures on my land no outsider should even know about. Someone was observing my property closely enough to take entry. I still didn't give it serious thought. Until one morning, I opened my gate to find a bright orange notice nailed to the post, an official violation warning. That was the moment something cold settled in my stomach, because now, whoever was behind this wasn't just mailing threats, they had stepped onto my land, crossed my fence, touched my property. It made no sense. I didn't belong to any association. I didn't owe any group explanations about my barns, my equipment, or my ranch layout. The closest HOA was in a suburban community nearly 40 minutes away, yet the notice had their name on. It a human mistake? A clerical error? That's what I tried telling myself. But deep down, I knew something bigger was brewing. This was only the first ripple in a much larger storm that would escalate far beyond letters, warnings, or silent trucks. Storm that would make the HOA believe they had the authority to arrest me on my own land, and all of it was leading toward a confrontation they were wildly unprepared for because they had no idea who they were dealing with. The day the orange violation notice appeared on my gate, something shifted in the air. It was subtle at first, a quiet tension, like the land itself was holding its breath. I took the notice down, folded it, and slipped it into my pocket, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe someone punched in the wrong address. Maybe the HOA sent their enforcer to the wrong person. But deep down, I already sensed that none of those explanations were true. The following week confirmed it. I woke up one morning to the sound of gravel crunching under unfamiliar tires. From my porch, I spotted a white SUV parked just outside my fence line, with the same spotless look as the trucks I'd seen earlier. Two people stepped out, both wearing bright neon vests with community compliance, division printed across the back. They looked wildly out of place against the raw landscape of the ranch. They weren't looking at the road. They weren't checking maps. They were staring directly at my property. One of them lifted a long-lens camera. That was the moment my peace evaporated. For the first time since moving out here, I felt something I never expected on a ranch: intrusion. Not the kind that came with broken fences or coyotes cutting through the fields. This was different. Cold, calculated, human. The SUV drove off as soon as they noticed me watching, but their message was clear. They were documenting my land. One day later, a new letter arrived. This one wasn't a notice, it was fine. A fine from an HOA whose authority ended miles before my fence line. The paper accused me of unauthorized agricultural expansion, failure to maintain community aesthetic standards, and unapproved structural modifications. None of it made sense. My ranch wasn't in their community. Their rules didn't apply here, and they had absolutely no legal right to fine me for anything, let alone what I did on my own land. But they fined me anyway. Hundreds of dollars. Failure to comply will result in escalated enforcement measures. The fine was warned, and the escalation came. They trespassed, they circled, they document D, they threatened. And then they arrived in a convoy, black and white. SUVs made to look like law enforcement, uniformed. Community enforcers with radios and batons. The leader stepped forward like he owned the land beneath his feet. Sir, you are hereby detained under community enforcement authority. Those words would ignite everything, because they had no idea who they were, trying to arrest and no idea what power they had just challenged. The moment the so-called community enforcer reached for my arm, time slowed. His fingers hovered inches away, and his officers fanned out behind him like they were preparing for a tactical arrest. Their SUVs rumbled behind them, engines idling with the confidence of people who believed uniforms could replace law, stepped back, not in fear, but with the certainty of someone who had been waiting for this moment. I raised my hand and told them to stop. The leader smirked. This is happening with or without your cooperation. That was his final mistake. I reached into my jacket, and every officer tensed. But instead of a weapon, I pulled out a dark blue folder, stamped with a federal seal. His smirk disappeared. Inside the folder were documents he recognized. Instantly, documents that proved I wasn't just a rancher. I was a federal consultant responsible for auditing and reporting. HOA misconduct nationwide. I wasn't powerless. I was their worst possible opponent. I laid out everything. Every trespass, every illegal fine, every impersonation of authority. Every video recording, every timestamp, every violation they committed, and then I said the words that snapped their confidence in half. This case is already reported. Not a threat. A fact. Their faces drained as I listed the agencies now involved. County, state, and federal. Their fabricated extended compliance zone didn't exist. Their authority was fake. Their actions were criminal. The leader flipped through the evidence, hands trembling. I told them they had two choices: leave immediately, or stay and add resisting lawful reporting procedures to their charges. They retreated, not with authority, but with fear. They got in their SUVs, radios buzzing with panic, and drove off. The last officer looked back through the window with unmistakable dread. They hadn't tried to arrest a helpless rancher. They had tried to arrest the one person capable of dismantling their entire operation, and I intended to do exactly that. When the final SUV turned off the road, the ranch fell into a peaceful silence. But I knew the story wouldn't end there. Power-hungry organizations don't collapse quietly. Yet within 2 days, the deputy confirmed what I already expected. State and federal oversight were now involved, and within a week, internal documents from the HOA leaked, emails, memos, minutes, everything. The truth came out. The HOA had been illegally expanding its jurisdiction, issuing fraudulent fines, sending enforcers to intimidate homeowners, targeting isolated properties like mine to avoid resistance. My ranch wasn't their first target, but It became their last. The media exploded. Investigations widened. Board members resigned or were arrested. Their entire operation collapsed. And as it collapsed, homeowners from across the country reached out to me, not fans. Victims, people. Bullied by their HOAs, people. Fined for ridiculous rules, people. Threatened with liens, harassment, or bogus violations. Their stories were heartbreaking. Their relief was overwhelming. Stand wasn't about ego, it wasn't about winning, it was about proving something bigger. No HOA has the right to take what isn't theirs. No homeowner is powerless, and no system built on intimidation survives the truth. By the end of the year, the HOA dissolved. Its assets were frozen. Board members were barred from leadership positions. Its enforcement division was shut down permanently. The neighborhood it once controlled was rebuilt into a community-led system that prioritized residents, not power. And my ranch, it returned to peace, true peace. No more letters, no more trucks, no more threats, just land, quiet and freedom. The way it was meant to be, but the impact didn't end at my fence line, because the investigation didn't stop with one HOA. It spread nationwide, complaint by complaint, case by case. And every time another corrupt HOA fell, it echoed the same truth. It started with one rancher who refused to bow. So if there's one question every viewer should walk away with, it's this. If an HOA tried this on a ranch miles outside its jurisdiction, what might be happening in your own neighborhood that no one's questioning yet? If this story opened your eyes to what HOAs really do, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. More wild HOA battles are coming.